we're looking at this is 2.3 product and quotient rule select homework problems, evaluating derivatives using graphs. These are problems 81 and 82. Evaluating a derivative, so we're given that p of x is f of x times g of x, and q of x is f of x divided by g of x. So for 81 it says find p prime of 1. So to find p prime of 1, we know that we have to involve this relationship, this product relationship between f of x and g of x. So if we look at the graph here, we have a graph of f and we have a graph of g. So to find p prime of 1, we first need to find p prime of x. So p prime of x requires us to have to go through product rule, since the two functions are related to one another by multiplication. So the product rule says f prime g plus fg prime. Now once we have product rule spelled out, now we can replace every x with 1. So p prime of 1 will be f prime of 1 times g of 1 plus f of 1 times g prime of 1. So f prime, if we're looking at a graph, the derivative is going to mean what is the slope of the graph, of the f graph at 1. And f of 1 or g of 1 is simply looking for the position or the y value of the graph. So let's start off with f prime of 1. F prime of 1 is asking what is the exact slope of the f graph at 1, not the order pair, but the slope, since we're talking about f prime. So f prime of 1, we're talking about the slope of the graph at this point. Now the nice thing here is that this is a straight line, so the slope here is going to be the same as any point on this line. So if we can figure out the slope of this line, then we also know the slope of the f graph at 1. So if I choose 2 points, I see if I do rise over run, the slope of this line segment is up 1 over 1, so that's the slope of positive 1. So I can replace f prime of 1 with 1. G of 1 is asking for what is the position of the g graph at 1. So here's my g graph. The position of the g graph at 1 is 4. So replace g of 1 with 4. So we have 1 times 4 here, plus f of 1 times g prime of 1. F of 1 is asking for the order pair, the position of the f graph at 1, which is 6. And then g prime of 1 is asking for the slope of the g graph at 1. So here's the g graph. The g graph at 1 is talking about this line segment. And if we choose 2 points on this line segment, we can do rise over run. We see that this is going to be a negative slope. So I'm going to go from this point to this point, going rise over run, vertical and then horizontal. So we're going to go down 1 and to the right 2. So down 1 over 2, that's a negative 1 over a positive 2. That's a slope of negative 1/2. So f of 1 is 6, g prime of 1 is negative 1/2. We do 1 times 4 plus 6 times negative 1/2. So 1 times 4 is 4. 6 times negative 1/2 is negative 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. So 1 is our answer. For part B, find q prime of 4. So before we can find q prime of 4, we need to find q prime of x. So q prime of x, the relationship for q is f of x divided by g of x. So if you want to find the derivative of two expressions that are divided by one another, we have to go through quotient rule. So quotient rule says f prime g minus fg prime all over g squared. So here's quotient rule spelled out. Now we can replace every x with 4. That will get us to one step closer towards finding q prime of 4. So f prime of 4 times g of 4 minus f of 4 times g prime all over g of 4 squared. Same idea as part 1. It's just that now we're dealing with different x value, and also the orientation of these functions and derivatives is in the quotient rule form. So f prime of 4 is asking for the slope of the f graph at 4. So here's here's the f graph. The f graph at 4 is this line segment here with a negative slope. So if I can find the slope of this line, I can find the slope of the f graph at 4. So I choose 2 points on the f graph, and I find a slope. So the slope between these 2 points is down 1 over 1. That's the slope of -1. Replace f prime of 4 with -1. G of 4 is asking for the position of the g graph at 4, and the position of the g graph at 4 is 3. Okay. F of 4 is the position of the f graph at 4, which is up here at 7. And then the derivative, or the g prime of 4, is the derivative of the g graph at 4, and that is going to be part of this this horizontal line, and this flat line here. The slope is going to be 0. So replace g prime of 4 with 0. All over g of 4 squared. G of 4 is 3, so 3 squared is 9. We clean up the numerator and denominator. We get -3 over 9, which is -1/3. 82, similar steps as 81. We want to find p prime of 4, so p prime of x. To find p prime of 4, we need to first get to p prime of x, and again, just like 81, we go through product rule. Once we get through product rule, replace every x with 4. So now we want to find f prime of 4, so f prime of 4 is asking for the slope of the f graph. The f graph is the one without the curve here. F prime of 4, so we want to find the slope of this f graph at this point, so it's part of this line segment. So if I choose 2 points on this line, I can find the slope up 1 over 2, so 1/2. Replace g of 4 with the position of the g graph at 4, which is up here at 8. F of 4 is up here at 1, and g prime of 4 is asking for the slope of the g graph at 4, and this is a nice smooth curve, and we see that this is going to hit a maximum at this point, and we know the slope of this point is going to be exactly 0. Okay, so then we combine our terms together. 1/2 times 8 is 4. 1 times 0 is 0, so 4 plus 0 is 4. So p prime of 4 is equal to 4. To find q prime of 7, we look at the rule for q of x, which is f of x over g of x. We have to go through quotient rule. So we apply quotient rule just like 81b. Replace every x with 7. And now we're going to look at the graph to help us interpret. So f prime of 7 is asking for the slope of the f graph at 7, which is part of this line segment, and this line has a slope of 2. So if I choose 2 points on this graph here, from this point to this point, I'm going to go up 2 over 1, so that's a slope of 2. G of 7 is 4, so g of 7 is 4 that we see here. F of 7 is also 4, and then g prime of 7 is part of this line segment, so the slope of the g graph at 4 is going to be -1. And then g of 7 is also 4. So replace each of, get everything out of function notation. We get 2 times 4, which is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. 12 divided by 4 squared is 16. 12 over 16 reduces to be 3/4. For 103 and 105, it says use the given information to find f prime of 2. So here for f of x, we want to find f prime of 2, but before we can get there, we want to find f prime of x. So f of x is defined as g of x plus h of x. So f becomes f prime. 2g of x, 2 is just a coefficient, so it's going to tag along to whatever the derivative is, and the derivative for g of x becomes g prime, and h becomes h prime. So now we're going to replace every x with 2. So x gets replaced with 2, so this x gets replaced with 2, this x gets replaced with 2. So to find f prime of 2, we just need to figure out what we can replace this with. So 2 times g prime of 2 plus h prime of 2. G prime of 2 is given to us in, is listed for us here. G prime of 2 is -2, so we can make that substitution. So 2 times -2 here. h prime of 2 is 4, so replace h prime of 2 with 4, so 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so f prime of 2 is equal to 0. Okay, for 18, we want to find f prime of 2, so we see the relationship is that of quotient rule. So f prime of x is going to be g prime times h minus g h prime all over h squared. Replace every x with 2, and then we look at our definition to see what substitutions we can make. So g prime of 2 gets replaced with negative 2. H of 2 gets replaced with negative 1. G of 2 gets replaced with 3. H prime of 2 gets replaced with 4. And h of 2 gets replaced with negative 1. And if we clean this up, we get 2 minus 12 all over 1. 2 minus 12 is negative 10. And f prime of 2 is equal to negative 10.